Correct me if I am wrong, but the way I see it, a lot of people these days still want a laptop. But what they don't want to do is pay a lot of money, and that's actually totally legit, because even though I'm usually the one who says rather pay a little bit more, don't make too many compromises before you regret your purchase, I also have to say if you make the right compromises for the right price and you get exactly what you need, it might be actually totally well worth it. And that's why I want to review a few more of these super affordable Chinese laptops in the future, because I see the interest for it, and if you see it as well, maybe give it a like, subscription and a comment down there below just to let me know. And starting off this whole thing, I want to do today with the Chuwi Lapbook 12.3, because it is actually quite remarkable what you get here for just $300. Just keep that in your head, $300 if we go into the specs and all that here. So starting off with the design, yes, I have to point out one thing, with almost 1.4 kilograms, it's definitely quite heavy, and it's not the most compact one, because here, for example, the Onda Shoma or something like that 21 that weighs a little bit over a kilogram and is noticeably smaller, you see that the Chuwi isn't the most compact one, but it makes up for it with quite a few other things, because first of all, I did not expect the build quality for this price to be that solid, because nothing really creaks, nothing feels hollow, everything feels quite sturdy. We get some nice rubber feet that actually lift it even up. We get easy access to the M.2 slot, the speakers on the bottom. As we can see, it's not the thickest one for 12.3 inch, maybe a little bit more, yes, I get that, but still fine. The port for the charging, USB 3.0, a mini HDMI port, the microphone. On the front, nothing, but it's actually a little bit of a cutout available, so you can open it. On the side, we can see the micro SD card slot. Unfortunately, that is no full-size SD card slot. Headphone jack, USB 2.0, and the lock. And one thing that I personally like always a lot is if I can open it with one hand, which actually works quite nice. And what I also have to say is, even though the hinge wobbles quite a lot, it stays at its position after the wobble. So it's quite a stiff hinge, and you won't really move it too much since it's not a touchscreen. Anyways, what you will see though, quite big bezels. Like I said, it's not compact, but for its size, like I said, for the price especially, very well built, because the keyboard doesn't really flex. Everything feels super nice and solid, well made. So I kind of have to give it to that. Very good build quality. I can't say anything else than that. And if we talk about the keyboard, one thing that I would have liked to have seen is, of course, backlight and maybe a function lock. But otherwise, I have to say, especially the layout works quite okay. And the feedback is the most surprising thing, because if we quickly check that, it's not really loud, it's not really clicky. We have a nice amount of travel, and I especially like the feedback while typing so much. So I did not expect it to be that good, because maybe it doesn't at first glance look and feel all that premium, but the typing experience is actually surprisingly good. Now the trackpad, if we quickly check that, works out good, I would say, but what I don't like so much is that the scrolling direction is inverted. So if you scroll up, it scrolls up and not the other way around as you are usually known to it. So this is a little bit of a bummer. Maybe there's a way to work around it, but I didn't found it, but that's just to keep it out. Otherwise, friction is quite okay, the size is okay, it reacts well on all the gestures, so nothing to really point out further here. And that's why I would say let's actually go already to the display. And with the actual qualities, I am super impressed, because if we go a little bit closer, I have to actually tell you one thing. This is pretty much a Surface Pro 4 display. Same resolution, and it might actually be the exact same one, maybe of a little bit lower quality, because what I've noticed is that the maximum brightness is a little bit lower. Because if we try this, and like I said, there is no function lock, as you can see here, this is actually wrong. I always get that button wrong, because it looks a lot like the brightness button. Let's see this once, and I did it once again. Okay, now, as you can see, it's not super bright enough in most situations, maybe outdoors, not that well, but due to ink being matte, it works out. But what I also have to say, if you can maybe see, this is the lowest setting, which is okay, not super dim, but at about 50% and then 60, it doesn't really change anything. So there seems to be a bug, and 60%, or let's say the maximum, was actually what I always used. But what I have to say is, the display, even though it's matte, which is something that I personally don't like so much, I have to say works out actually really good, because it's clear enough due to the high resolution. The white point is great, and especially the calibration out of the box is really good. So the white point was there. A little bit more light bleed is available than on the Surface, so I see a little bit here and there, but still actually a little bit of a low amount. So actually totally fine. Black is solid, and the backlight bleed won't really disturb you either. Colors are nice. Maybe not super vibrant due to the matte screen, but definitely accurate. And I have to say that this is pretty much on the same level. Maybe not quite as bright, maybe not quite the same quality, but I will still give it actually what is maybe a little bit surprising for a few. I will give it an almost great rating. Now, what about the speakers on the bottom? Let's quickly check those. And yes, I've changed the track this time. No, I am not impressed. First of all, downfiring. So if you have it on your lap, if you have it on a couch or your bed, it will get quite muffled. And you definitely need the reflection of a desk or something like that. But even then, it is, I would say, at best acceptable because the maximum volume is not great. You have no bass, mostly just highs and a little bit of some mids. So it gets the bare minimum tasks done, but don't expect anything more. If you want more though, that was surprising to me, the headphone jack is actually really good, really loud, clean quality. And if you want to use that, sure, go ahead. Okay, now the next thing, the performance. And yes, we have to start off with the EMC drive. It's quite slow. This is pretty much on a level of a, let's say, old HDD. The boot time was also very slow with about 28 to 30 seconds. I also have to say, for some reason, this laptop compared to the Onda, which has the same SoC or processor, actually works a little bit more sluggish because as you can see, browsing in the scroller with the trackpad here works out quite okay with the mouse. Let's try this. It works a little bit, yeah, still a little bit jittery. So it's not completely smooth. But I also have to say, if you don't mind this too much, and especially if you use Edge browser, you will get a smoother experience, but I have to say that it just felt, due to also the slow drive, just a little bit sluggish, jumping in between many apps and so on, maybe tasks and tabs and so on. 6 gigs of RAM are quite nice actually, but the SoC or the processor felt just slower compared to the Onda, which is weird. But I also have to say one thing. If you just want to get the normal stuff done, like emails, watch YouTube videos, get your Word documents and so on done, it works. It's not the best experience, it's not the fastest, it's not the greatest experience ever, but it is totally doable. It's not like you would say, it's completely horrible, it's not acceptable, because it is. Of course, what you should not even think about is doing things like photo editing, photo and video editing, because that would work, but I can't imagine how awful the experience would be on a longer period of time. So super lightweight stuff, yes, and that's why I won't really even talk about the heat and noise, because noise there is none, since it is a fanless Core M, or I mean an Intel a Pentium, an Apollo Lake. We have no need for a fan. It doesn't really warm up a lot. It could maybe throttle at some point. I didn't really even bother because I don't see anyone doing anything like this for a longer period of time with harder load, so this doesn't matter. And the great thing is, since it is fanless, it also actually is completely without any coil whine, which is actually more important, because on some devices I've noticed this more than the fan. So temperatures in normal use, totally fine. Noise as well. Now what about the battery? A full charge takes almost 3 hours. Totally fine. It's not the biggest battery, but it's still acceptable. You just can't expect something on a higher end level anyways. And the battery life, I would say for me, on average was about 4.5 hours, which leads to pretty much 6.5 hours for everyone else, because I turn off all the power saving technologies and so on, use a higher brightness than most people, and maybe just switch around a little bit more with my apps and so on, so I drain a little bit harder. So from my experience, I would say expect about 6 hours, but I got 4.5 because I always want to try out the kind of worst case scenario. So this is, I would say, acceptable battery life still. Software, I don't need to talk about it. It's actually a little bit though, because this came with the Chinese version, and I could set it to English, which works fine. If you can maybe set it to different languages, language pack should work out, but maybe on the longer term, if you want to use this as a primary device or just more, maybe think about getting a Windows license to get the proper one for your language. Now, I would say let's go to the pros and cons. And here I have to say a good port selection, because we have at least 2 USB ports, no USB Type-C, but still the selection is quite nice. Easy M.2 slot access, a quite good, actually almost really good build quality, especially for this price. It is very good. A good design, maybe not super compact or something like that. Really good keyboard for its price, and I would actually almost kind of get rid of the for the price, because on its own it is a really good keyboard, especially the typing experience. The trackpad is good. not great. Almost great display though, which is something super impressive. So you mostly will enjoy this display a lot. This is kind of definitely the highlight of this laptop. We get a really good headphone jack, fanless, no coil one, which is great, acceptable battery life still. And for the price of around 300, the value is very good in my opinion. Okay, let's cover the not that great things. No USB Type-C, so maybe not that future-proof, but I don't think this is necessary on a laptop like this yet. The inverted USB port is a little bit weird because they are just the other way around, just something to keep in mind. Quite big and heavy for a 12.3-inch device, no backlit keyboard and no function lock unless I've maybe missed something. Inverted trackpad scrolling direction, I didn't find a workaround for that. Acceptable at best speakers, sluggish performance and overall, also slow storage, and it usually has to be imported. But my verdict, actually my conclusion about this laptop is quite easy. For $300, you don't really make too many extreme compromises. Yes, a little bit heavy, but let's think about it for a second. $300 and you get a beautiful display on a device that usually costs like 2 or 3 times that. Not maybe quite exactly the same quality, but super close. You get a nice trackpad, the keyboard works super nice. The speakers maybe not that great. The performance, I would say, gets all the tasks done moderately. Just don't expect too much. But $300 once again. And yes, I still have to kind of set my perspectives right because I haven't really reviewed many. But if I, for example, compare this with the Onda has some other advantages, but it also has some disadvantages over this one. So even though this by no imagination or by no stretch is perfect, for the price, I can still easily recommend it because what most people usually just do will get handled with this, and then you get a great experience due to the really great display, because this is the thing that you look at the most, and you can carry it around it because it's not at the end like it's super heavy, and you get a nice quality. So yeah, I actually like it. It's not quite exactly what I wanted because I would still maybe pay a little bit more, but if you don't want to pay more than 300, there is not really any need for that these days anymore, which is actually super nice to see. And if this review was super nice to watch, maybe give it a thumbs up, subscription, and let me know anything down there in the comments. Until next time.